Hands on, feet on, powered on. On your mark. On is the start of everything. On is the key to learning. Being on an environment, not just in it. Being on the world, not just of it.
Tarkett understands how important on is.
We work on it every day. On the ground with you, designing flooring experiences to grow on, dream on, and get on with it.
Okay, hello everyone. John Sumlin here from Tarkett, and I'm going to be presenting on life cycle cost assessments and total cost of ownership modeling. We call them LCCA and TCO. You'll hear those in acronyms, but I work for Tarkett North America. I'm the Vice President of Education Vertical Markets, the education segment, and reside in Atlanta, Georgia, a longtime A4LE attendee. Hopefully I know some of you guys out there that are watching, and I'll jump right in. So we're going to start with a description of ANSI and total cost of ownership. What is that concept? Total cost of ownership relative to a study that was completed. It was funded by the EPA to look at flooring, and we're going to also explore generically different types of flooring. So heterogeneous, homogeneous, hybrid resilient, sheet flooring are going to be three terms that you may not have heard before, and I'll just describe what they are. We also call those HE, which is heterogeneous, HO, which is homogeneous, and hybrid resilient, we call hybrid resilience flooring. So, and then we'll close at the end. And obviously there won't be any questions under this format, but if you do have questions, my email will be at the end, and would love to hear from you. And this concept is awesome. And hopefully it will serve you well, whether you're a school district personnel person, an architect that's talking to school districts, a planner, any one of the hats that are worn by the Association for Learning Environments members. So ANSI, if you don't know ANSI, it's American National Standards Institute is what it stands for. And they are a regulatory body that assembles information that allows safety, most importantly, but allows for standards to be created. Probably the most well-known ANSI relationship is with ASHRAE, which is the mechanical group that helps develop sizing of mechanical systems. And ASHRAE and ANSI have created a standard for mechanical systems. And now what they have done is created a standard for total cost of ownership, which allows you to look at a building as a system. So the concept being is you build a building and you try to determine really from a commissioning standpoint, if you want to go that far, but really from a component standpoint, what are or what is the life cycle of that building? And last but not least, I want to recognize APA, which is the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. They were sort of point on getting ANSI and total cost of ownership together, and the membership was instrumental there. So here is that definition of the American National Standards Institute. It's products, services, processes, systems, personnel, standards in the U.S. And they reside in Washington, D.C., 125,000 companies, 3.5 million professionals that get together. And what I especially like about ANSI is it's both design, or not both, but many different influencers. So there's a design professional, the building owner. There is the the manufacturer, the supplier, which is the role that I have, and they facilitate getting us all together to create a standard, and that's what they have done for total cost of ownership, which you'll see there. But they were founded in 1918, 99 years ago. You can imagine that some of the early work that they did was around fire codes. And how do we make buildings safe from a fire perspective? Because if you know the history, of the U.S. and cities, and buildings, fire was one of the early threats to buildings. So the best practice is really around safety. This particular standard we're talking about, total cost of ownership, is a cost versus price discussion. We'll talk more about that as we go through. And it really is credited. ANSI is credited with being sort of the keeper of all these standards. And the most known one is the ASHRAE, because of obviously every building has some sort of mechanical system, unless it's open air, and they have developed and keep those standards, and so their credibility is very high. So what makes a standard? It's a document established by consensus. It provides rules and guidelines and characteristics for activities or their results. And so that's a very wordy way of saying that it's creating consistencies within buildings that allow you to predict how the building is going to perform. So you look at roofing systems, you look at exteriors, you look at glass, windows, all those are predictable. So what are some of the other standards that are out there, say for us as a manufacturer? World-class manufacturing, WCM. This is a safety, consistency process system that we use to make products with. Cradle to cradle, that is a standard that's used out there. And so be aware of that. The Circular Economy 100 is a standard that is being developed globally on how we create products that don't waste the Earth's resources. So it would be creating products that are circular in nature, so they can be used, recycled, and reused, and even reused in their original form is even a better scenario as well. So the circular economy is an important one. Standards play a role in everyday life. I mean, your automobile would be a wonderful example of safety standards in your automobile. They could establish size or shape or capacity of a product, process, or system across the built environment and across the manufactured environment. And they specify performance of products or personnel to help develop consistency or standardization within building performance. They also can define terms so that there's no misunderstanding amongst those that use the standard. So that would be if you are a school district and you have several hundred buildings, you want consistency. And that's what these standards will do. And it should permeate all of the materials that you use in your building. And you should, and we promote and we believe in standards. If you don't have standards, you're going to be finding yourself trying to research, what's another example? Research materials over and over again, constantly. So again, not to belabor ANSI, but to make sure that it's understood the history of ANSI. It changed names a few times. Basically, the United States of America Standards Institute was the most recent prior to ANSI, which ANSI was founded in 1969. The name was. So this is not new to you, and hopefully you understand the importance of it. It's a consensus by a group that is open to representatives from all interested parties. So it's not a, if you're familiar with, say, specification standards that come out, those are developed by a small group and then it's deployed. These standards are actually developed with input from all interested parties. And so you can, it has an open period when it's developed, and that open period allows you to critique that standard. Broad-based public review for comment is intended because they don't want these standards to be questioned. They want the standards to be indoctrinated and used without concern. And so consideration of and response to comments, it's very well documented and available for your review. If you find that something that you want to do, and in this particular case, total cost of ownership is the category we're talking about. They incorporate the submitted changes that meet the same consensus requirement into a draft standard. So everybody gets to be heard. And as we know in the world out there, that's a good thing, because you want a consensus. There's an availability of an appeal process. And so the participants alleging that these principles were not respected during the standards, they have the ability to appeal. And that is all done through forums. And these forums for this particular standard, total cost of ownership, followed all these formats. And it allows for early warning of relevant trends. So let's say that a particular ANSI standard around ASHRAE, and there was some failures within the mechanical system. They were not getting the fresh airflow. The CO2 levels were escalated. The building was not working like it should because of that bad airflow. They're able to take that consensus in, modify the standard, and then update it. And that's what they, again, do on the mechanical side. Total cost of ownership went through the same litmus, and we're trying to, gain that credibility that, that has been developed over many different ANSI standards. So it's a opportunity to identify broad-based issues to be addressed by the governance body, that there are issues. And so, again, not to belabor it, but it's important for you to know this. They assume an active role with membership and recruitment. So I get emails from ANSI because I participated in this total cost of ownership standard, and so they keep up with us. So it serves as one place within ANSI where participants can represent their own organization's interest and be heard. And as we all know, being heard is half the battle. If you feel like your case has been heard, you will respect the standard. And so this is the abstract that was written for total cost of ownership. And this standard outlines the process for owners and managers of built assets to produce the greatest possible return on investment, and will allow for effective use of limited capital resources. That's a lot, but basically what it's saying is that this has created a structure at a high level of total cost of ownership to create a transparent, holistic, and efficient approach to managing your asset, in this case, a building. So that is a great statement there. So it balances both financial management and facilities management of an organization. And so the best example I have there is if you are reporting to a chief business officer, chief financial officer. The concept is this gives us in the facility world, the built environment world, a platform to be able to discuss with the financial side of the house of why we want to spend money. And so basically it organizes, aligns the mission within the investment strategy for an asset's life cycle, including all related infrastructure and business process cost. And so it gives you a forum, which whether you like it or not, is probably going to be an Excel spreadsheet. It's going to be very data-driven decision making around why buildings perform well and why you might invest in a building at a higher level. Meaning, I mentioned it earlier, you look at the price, you have to also look at the cost. So price is what you pay, and cost is what you actually end up investing over the life of the building, life of the material, life of the roof. And that comprehensive life cycle impact on a specific asset decision on the entire facility is what TCO creates. And it's really from the organization from inception and onward. So that means from the building being opened, the building even being conceptualized and being built. It allows you to determine this cost, and it can be applied at any time in an asset service life to determine appropriate outcome of the asset. So basically what that means is if you want to look at 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 50-year, each one of those gates allows you to look at the assets within the building and allows you to judge, was the life cycle of that particular component what you expected, or I should even say better, what you want. And you'll see further as we go along that materials greatly affect that. So who were the folks that were involved with this? It was, again, conducted more in the higher ed world, but a facility, as we all know, is a facility, but these were the influencers. You can see, Jacobs Engineering, Salt Lake Community College, Arkansas State University, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, all were sub-working groups within this total cost of ownership endeavor. I thought this was important because it really brings credibility to the total cost of ownership discussion because of the credibility of these individuals. So I'll go to the next page. University of Wisconsin, Schneider Electric, they're a service provider for that. NASA was involved. Bill Brott, because again, as we all know, all these individuals have facilities, they're building facilities, and they have to judge the life cycle cost or total cost of those buildings. Purdue, University of Maryland, College Park. So the credibility of the endeavor was high. So why does it matter? How can I or we help? Well, the idea here is to consolidate time and materials and create a cost of a component. And I'm going to talk specifically about flooring. That's my expertise, but you could apply it to every component of the building. And basically, you're going to report the materials. You're going to talk about the processes that could potentially save you time, document what you save on those materials, and is that avoidable, and can there be can help be provided to build a budget to show the ROI of that product. So why would you do an ROI? Why would you do a return on investment? Well, you're saying I want to spend 20% more on this product because it's going to give me a lower cost over a 20-year period. So first cost is higher, but life cycle cost is lower. And it helps you build a case for why you want to use it. Flooring is a very easy one to do. You can spend very little on a material and have a very high life cycle cost. So that'd be a high cost to the product, but a very low price. And it does not serve the institution well because you're spending labor and material cost to maintain it. And so there was some research that was done, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But actually, I compared several, but 85 to 90% of the life cycle cost of flooring is labor. So install, removal, daily cleaning, restorative cleaning, et cetera. So you're really, when you talk about material cost, and we also call that price, you are talking about often less than 10% of the cost of that product overall. And so that just puts it in perspective. If you're going to say, well, we don't want to spend this additional 20%, or we don't want to spend this additional 50% on the front end to get a quality product, you're actually costing yourself quite a bit on the back end. And it is extremely important to have this discussion. And the discussion I'm talking about specifically, which is under the umbrella of total cost of ownership, is life cycle costing. So life cycle costing is the process of going through an analysis and the selection of alternatives that impact both pending and future cost. It compares initial investment, first cost, option, and identifies the least cost alternatives for, in this case, a 20-year period. And so I want to emphasize this because when you build a building, and I've said it several times, but I want to re-emphasize it, these materials that you use, and flooring being a huge one, you could look at wall coverings, you could look at ceilings, you can look at, you could look at movable furniture, FF&E, you can look at mechanical, roofs, exteriors. All those things require life cycle discussions, life cycle cost discussions. And so I just want to, again, bring that credibility to it. So in order to do that effectively, I find that it's important to look at third-party research. And so what is third-party research? This is something that someone else did that is very similar to what we are doing to assist you. And it gives sort of an independent look at this, in this case, life cycle costing. So this particular study was EPA funded. It's safer alternatives to current floor wax strippers for schools and public buildings. And the objective of this particular research was to determine what is the impact of floor strippers on the outdoor environment. And if you don't know this, it does affect outdoor environment air quality. It actually creates smog. And so in doing so, this particular researcher who is referenced here, and I have it referenced. If I didn't reference it there, it is referenced. But the research is called Safer Alternatives to Current Floor Wax Strippers for Schools and Public Buildings. It was conducted with and funded by the University of Nevada, Reno, the Bay Area Air Quality, EPA Region 9, and the researcher, this is what I was looking for, the Institute for Research and Technical Assistance, IRTA, Dr. Katie Wolf. And so what she ended up doing was assessing different flooring types, and she wanted to know the cost of maintaining them, because she was trying to look at the products that required wax and the products that did not require wax. And hopefully everybody on the webinar here is familiar with what an applied finish is, but this is what you put on flooring once it's installed. And in this case, it's composition tile in this particular case, vinyl composition tile, VCT, and she looked at the cost of the material as well as the cost to maintain it. And she came up with a total cost of a new installation as well as a replacement installation. So why are they different? Well, when you replace a product after a certain period of time, you have to remove the old and put in a new. And so that's why she had two different numbers. And so whenever I show these numbers, a hand will pop up and say, well, that's great. Well, how big was the area? How many square feet were in the area? And I'm getting ready to show that. So I just thought I would, because if everybody's, it would be nice if we had a chat box where questions could be asked. But anyways, I'll continue on and maybe pose some typical questions I get. But the capital cost you see here with the green arrows, and then the operating costs you see here with the green box. So these are labor and materials, and this is actual capital outlay. So that's the cost of the material and install in a new building, and then the replacement cost. And you can see the labor makes up this 25,000, the material makes up the 2,000, and you can see the difference here, which again, the difference is the demolition of the existing product, the existing flooring, and you get your total cost. And I just highlight total labor, total material, which I already did on the previous slide. And then you come up with your total cost, which is synonymous with total cost of ownership, but that's where the word actually came from. So here's the slide that breaks it down. It was a 9,600 square foot installation. And notice that it included the initial scratch coat. It included a new and replacement installation, maintenance. There was also a 4% cost of money or an opportunity cost, because you're spending money over time. You need to include that opportunity cost. So this researcher did a phenomenal job of this, and this white paper is available out there on the internet, or I could provide it to you so you could see exactly how all this was done. But the most important part is this $3.38 per square foot, and $65 per foot, depending whether it's a new install or a renovation. I'm going to compare a couple of different materials here. And so I'm going to continue to click through. I think I explained that it's new and old, $3.38, $3.65 for the replacement. Here are some other materials. So these are industry names from various manufacturers that are out there, but Optima IQ is an homogeneous product, so HO, I mentioned earlier. EcoPure is an HE. Omnisports is HE. Contour is an HE. Mineral Chip is an HO. PowerBond is a hybrid resilient, and Mondo is a rubber, so we would call that an HO. And it gives you the cost of the material, the surface prep, the demo, the install. So all these products were included in the research. There is one part of the research that's a little unique. And if any of you that have looked at research, there's always nuances to the research, but the lady that did this used warranty as a driver for how long a product stays on the floor. So when doing that, she did look at replacement cost that was accelerated because of very low warranties. Now, for that reason, I actually, show a couple of slides that are done independent of the research to give you a more realistic, I think, more real world number. And so all I've done here is I've just rolled up the costs that were on the previous slide so that you could see, maybe the difference of the cost of materials as you go down the road and you're using these different materials. This actually looks at with maintenance. So they're including maintenance in here. So annual cost, no demolition, annual cost with demolition. And if a year had demolition in it because it had to be removed, she included it. So extremely thorough work paper that was done by this research firm with this EPA money. And so what we come down to, if you can see where my cursor is, and it actually highlights it, you end up with a per square foot cost on each one of these different types of material. And what I do is I convert them. So I convert them to generic flooring types, because obviously if they're brand names, there's a difficulty that I find in the real world when you as a school district or you as a design professional or planner, you're trying to source materials. You want a vinyl sheet or tile, linoleum, vinyl sheet for in a sports setting, an LVT with a 32 mil wear layer, solid vinyl tile, a hybrid resilient, a rubber sheet or tile. This allows you to convert those to, sort of standard materials that are out there. And so that is important to do. And so I just want to make sure that you're aware that this table does include maintenance, and that's what you see in these numbers, as well as the standard installation when it has to be removed. Because again, when you're doing total cost of ownership, you can look at 20 years, you can look at 30 years, you can look at 50 years. You are going to see some replacements that occur in the building before the building actually expires. So that's all fine and dandy. What I find is sort of the aha moment is if you project these different materials, which I have by material type, all the way from VCT to rubber, you're able to see the life cycle cost after 25 years. And so what's included? The initial cost, she does include the removal and replacement at the end of the warranty. So that's why you see, say, a VCT be very, very high on first cost, because she's included replacement of that product every 5 years, and it causes the numbers to be skewed. And so I just want to be totally transparent on that. It is, it does need to be considered when you look at this particular research. So anyhow, in the annualized model, labor accounts for 92%. So I mentioned a range of 95 to 90. The annualized model, labor accounts for 92% of the cost. If I could have a little highlight come across, I don't think I do, that is massive. So when you're looking at this particular material, when you're building a building, the 92% of the cost of the product is going to be the labor side of it, which includes all the things that I've mentioned. And so what I find in our industry is in on projects is first cost ends up being obsession, because you've got a budget to meet. And what's happening is the operations silo that's over here, the guys who got to take care of it are not communicating with the planning side or the construction side. And so you lose that information. And so you have to be totally conscious of this, and hopefully most people are. And you can have a material that cost you over 25 years $160,000 versus a material that cost you $800,000. And if you're not communicating between operations and maintenance and planning and design and construction, you are going to end up using these products that don't meet your objectives from a total cost of ownership perspective. And so that's extremely important. So this is really a sort of an aha moment in this particular slide. I found that this was extremely, just an amazing piece out of this particular research, is that the results of the project indicated that using VCT flooring in new buildings is not a good option. Buildings owners and occupants should select alternative floorings, and the alternatives are less costly to use over the life of the flooring in all cases. So why is that? 92% of the cost is labor, and it's all bound up in that maintenance number, which for that particular type of product is stripping and waxing, recoating, and all those options to maintain them, to keep them looking and performing like you want them to. So that's the end of the EPA piece of that, the EPA funded research. And so what this is this is a 10-year replacement cycle that I did for an owner, a very large institutional owner that uses VCT in their buildings. And you'll notice that their numbers are a little bit different on these different products. So VCT doesn't come in at the $3.38. It comes in a little bit lower cost of $2.67, which still per foot is extremely high, especially when you compare it. This was a product they were looking at, which is this LVT. In this case, it was a 30 mil LVT. And you see the first cost here is $595 versus $259. So you're comparing these two products, but when you add them together, the price actually comes down, because you're looking at $1.09 in maintenance versus $2.67. And so when you project that over time, you're going to see that on a graph that I produce for you. And that's highlighting the cost at the 10-year replacement. And this is at the 20-year replacement, because if you're familiar with inflation, that $5.95 is actually going to be $8.67 when you project it out. VCT will cost $3.80 in 10 years. LVT will cost that additional, as long as inflation is out there. Now, when you're doing these cost studies, you need to include it. Inflation has been very low lately, but it's important to include. So this is a third product. This is SVT that's out there. I'm just going to show it has a much higher first cost of $9. And then at 20 years, it's $13, again, including inflation. And that shows that at the 2% inflation per year. And so this really is just to make you aware that inflation is, don't forget it when you're doing these cost analyses. It's important. And so what I wanted to do here was show, this is a different model. This is where we replace it every 10 years. See that little bump? That's where the material is replaced at a 10-year cycle. VCT is at your 922. And if you use a 30 mil LVT and you replace it at 20 years, which is the warranty, ironically, you're going to still only spend $477,000. The $553 is for a solid vinyl tile. And what we're showing is that you can save, in this case, the delta between 477 and 922. And if I round up, that's over $422,000 over a 25-year period that you could save. And for an institutional client, that's a lot of money to consider. So we're running these life cycle costs for select owners, architects, to illustrate this, because what we end up getting into the fight over is this right here, which you'll notice my first cost on VCT is different than the research, because I use the actual, not with 5-year replacement at warranty, and it is the lowest first cost. So why does lowest first cost always get the advertisement? Is because when the budgets are built, they build in that VCT budget and they don't build in an operating budget. And so what I'm imploring all those that are watching, all those that get involved in flooring specifications, is that you look at alternatives. In this case, 30 mil LVT, mineral chip, which is a solid vinyl tile. You can look at rubber. You can look at other homogeneous vinyls. There's LVT alternatives. There's some lower cost LVTs that have shorter warranties out there. I find that owners of buildings don't like to come off of anything less than 20 years in a warranty, because they want that sort of performance, because for all those maintenance and operation people out there listening, you don't get a budget to replace this flooring until long after that building has been open. And you're not getting a budget to replace it 10-year. You've got to live with these products for 20 minimum. And so this cost savings is huge. So that is sort of an epiphany part of the presentation. Now, what we have here is this is a life cycle cost assessment tool that we have created. This is a landing page. I'm going to pause here. Actually, I could click on it and it would go to it, but I don't want to change that because this is a recorded webinar. But what I'm encouraging you is for you to take down that https:// take down that address, which is Tarkett LCCA .s-Heilman HILEMAN.biz, and it takes you to this landing page. Now, if it fails and you don't get there, my email is on the last slide, and you'll have a chance to get my email, which is a lot simpler. But the idea here is you're able to put a project in, put the square footage in, project out your maintenance cost on the most popular flooring types out there. And we did make we were very careful to use generic flooring types such as VCT, LVT, homogeneous vinyl, hybrid resilient soft surface flooring, which we call ours Power Bond, carpet tile, and you're able to plug them into these into this life cycle assessment tool and create your own. Now it is it's a light version. We don't have built into this particular version the ability for you to replace the flooring product. So that means that you would just assume one installation. Now I have the ability to put other installations in there, and we are investing in this life cycle tool because of the popularity to allow you to do it. But today you have to request that. But this just allows you to get a feel for how does VCT perform against homogeneous vinyl? How does VCT perform against modular carpet tile? How does homogeneous vinyl perform against polished concrete? We included ceramic. We included terrazzo because we feel like it's important to have an open discussion. And so you'll see all that in there. It should be very user-friendly and easy to use. What I'm going to do with my last few minutes is just show some imagery so that you understand what these different products are. This is a solid vinyl tile. Out there you can see, I mean, you can even get almost like a terrazzo look there. The right side is a homogeneous vinyl. Both of these products do not require a finish. They require some light. Well, the right side requires no finish for the life of the product ever. The left side, if there is some degradation to the factory applied urethane finish, you can put a light coat on it to re-sheen it. All that can be talked about with a flooring professional. And so, but you'll notice the aesthetic is quite different than you're getting with some of the other products. This is a great product. So this is another LVT, which is heterogeneous. It's layered with an inlay. And so that's kind of cool. This is a LVT product with a solid vinyl tile inlaid into it to create wayfinding. And these each perform differently. And so we've talked about them a little bit, but I just wanted to show some nice imagery of what some great floors look like. This is modular carpet tile. This is a hybrid resilient. This is where we make carpet tiles as a sheet. So the seams are actually eliminated. We chemically weld the seams, and so you have a wall-to-wall moisture barrier. And where does that come into play? With maintenance. If you're using an extractor to clean it with, you could jettison water between modular products. So people use sheet goods. Again, that's more during a flooring consultation than you would do, say, on a webinar. So this is a homogeneous vinyl. This is a solid vinyl tile that we ultrasonically cut, that happens to be at the entry of the Empire State Building, which gets 10,000 visitors each day. Now, that has to be amended. Everybody knows why, for COVID. But this floor was designed to be ultra incredibly great performing product. And so this is a rubber product that's cut into an image. And so you can put these in the floor. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. This is the hybrid resilient. Again, this is a music circle that you can take these particular types of products and cut them into pieces, and a flooring professional can help you with these. These have to be designed. They have to be manufactured, and we use ultrasonic cutting, which is a cool process, which I won't get into because I'm getting close to my end here as I time myself. But I'm going to do a little recap and close. So total cost of ownership. Hopefully you understand that now is the real deal. It's now an ANSI standard. I have the standard. If you'd like it, you can go online and buy it from ANSI for, I think, $45. You share it with your operations group, your senior leadership, and you become a total cost of ownership shop. And that means you use life cycle costing on all your components, which we've named. What we got into detail with is flooring. So we looked at the EPA funded storage, those numbers, the study. What are your numbers? What are the different types of flooring? The concept is to minimize coatings and get the best warranty you can for your buck. New materials versus old materials, old glues versus new glues. Flooring has evolved over the years. And so the reason I put this one in here, if you replace a floor that's been down for 30 years and you put in, say, a new type of floor that's actually the same type of technology, let's use composition tile, talked about it a lot. So VCT that was made 30 years ago versus what was made today, the glue is different, the material is different. It is just not as durable. And so I just want you to be aware that things have changed. Other points to consider: aesthetics. The way things looked have greatly improved. We've got textures, colors, abstracts, stones, woods across the board. And so the aesthetics that you can gain in a building from the floor up are amazing. And I would recommend that you reach out on that for the flooring options. It's extensive and it's really exciting if you haven't gotten involved in it. And a little bit of investment will pay huge dividends down the road. You know, the flexibility of the material. I go into a lot of buildings and I see a lot of flooring products that are broken into pieces, either at expansion joints or at high use areas, doorways, things like that. And I see where replacement pieces are put in and they don't match the die lot. And so they're old versus new. Try to avoid that. Try to use products that, you know, can be replaced without that happening. And there's a lot of ways to accomplish that, which I won't get into. But, you know, flooring is a huge category. I've taken a bit of your time here. My recorded time is right at 50 minutes. And so this is who I am. I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation, john.sumlin@tarkett.com. My phone number, if you'd like to talk. I have an extensive background in total cost of ownership, the concept to get your operation, your facility your school district, your community college, your architecture design firm, your planning group over to this philosophy. And the ANSI document does that. And then we support you with life cycle cost. And that support allows you to then create a return on investment to present to the chief business officer, the chief financial officer. And then what we do is we build a consensus, and we start using products to build your schools that will last 50 years, that can last 30 years. We can do it with products that last 20 years. Each one of those has a different requirement, both with maintenance, first cost, and things like that. So hopefully you got my email. I'm going to pause there for a moment and take just a momentary break. If you have any questions, you'll have to email them to me because we can't ask them. We can't ask them live. So anyhow, thanks for attending. I appreciate the interest, and please reach out. Thanks a lot.